Welcome back to the Remedify Coaching Program podcast. Today we're diving deep into some pretty fundamental questions.
Yeah, like origins and stuff.
Origins, right? Like the universe,
Mm-hmm.
life itself.
That's a big one.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And even dinosaurs.
Always a crowd pleaser, dinosaurs.
Yeah, and all of this is spurred by some really interesting material compiled by a guy named Mike Riddle.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
You shared this with us, and we really want to unpack these, what he calls, 4 power questions to ask an evolutionist.
It's a catchy title.
It is, right. And, the goal here is to really see what kind of insights emerge when we take a look at all these different, aspects of our very existence.
Yeah, I mean, understanding the different perspectives on these really fundamental topics, that's what makes it so fascinating.
For sure.
It's like looking at the world through different lenses.
Exactly. So the material you've given us actually does a nice job of kind of contrasting evolutionary viewpoints with what's described as a biblical worldview.
Yeah, it lays it out pretty clearly.
Yeah, we've got like excerpts from biology textbooks, kind of outlining the scientific understanding.
And then we have statements from the National Academy of Sciences.
Right, so it's like the consensus view within the scientific community.
Exactly. But then we also have, of course, passages from biblical scripture.
Which offers a theological perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to round it out, we've got perspectives from actual scientists.
Who hold these various views on the subject.
So it's like a multifaceted conversation.
It is. It's really cool. So, before we get into the weeds, let's just lay out the map for this deep dive, all right? We're going to be tackling 4 major questions here.
Sounds good.
First up is, where did the matter to create the universe even come from?
Like the ultimate building blocks of everything.
Yeah, like where did it all begin? Second, we're looking at how life itself got started.
From non-living matter.
Right, that's a big leap.
A huge one.
Third, the origin of dinosaurs.
My personal favorite.
Of course. And finally, we're going to dive into this really intriguing power question concerning observational evidence for evolution.
That should be interesting.
I think so. So our mission, if you will, during this deep dive is to really consider the different possibilities presented in your sources.
Right, because there's not always one definitive answer.
Totally. We want to understand the reasoning behind each view.
The evidence they present.
Exactly. And keep in mind that there are different belief systems at play here.
Different starting points, yeah.
Right. So let's kick things off at the very beginning.
Like Genesis.
Well, in a way, yeah. The origin of the universe. What do we have here?
All right, so the material starts by laying out 3 main options for how the universe came into being.
3 options, okay.
First, we have the idea that the universe just somehow created itself.
Out of nothing.
Out of nothing, yeah. Second, maybe it's always been around, like it's infinitely old.
No beginning, no end.
Right. And third, of course, the idea that it was created by God.
Okay, so those are our 3 contenders.
Exactly. And for more on this, you can check out Danny Faulkner's book, The Created Cosmos.
We'll be sure to link that in the show notes. Now, it's interesting that right from the start, the material seems to really lean into this idea of a biblical worldview as a primary framework.
Yeah, it's pretty explicit about that.
Right. It cites several key passages. There's Timothy 3.1617, which talks about how all scripture is God-breathed, useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training in righteousness, and then Matthew 22.37.
Which highlights the greatest commandment.
Yeah. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind.
Right, putting God first.
Exactly. And we also have John 17.17, which straightforwardly states God's word is truth.
Truth with a capital T.
Right. And lastly, 1 Peter 3.15.
The one about always being prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have.
With gentleness and respect, right.
Of course, of course.
So it's clear from the outset that the material is approaching these questions from a particular angle.
Yeah, it lays its cards on the table.
It does. All right, so with that foundation laid, the material then brings in Psalm 19.1.
The heavens declare the glory of God.
Beautiful imagery, right.
Yeah, the sky is proclaiming his handiwork.
And Romans 1.20.
For his invisible attributes, namely, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse.
Basically saying you can see evidence of God's creative power in the world around you.
Yeah, the created world is a testament in itself.
Okay, so now we're moving on to what science has to say. I mean, when we talk about the origin of the universe, the Big Bang Theory comes to mind, right?
Absolutely. That's the prevailing scientific understanding. And as the material notes, this model basically proposes that the universe began about 13 to 15 billion years ago from this incredibly hot, dense state.
Right, and it's been expanding ever since.
Exactly. And I think what's fascinating is that even some scientists who support the Big Bang, they grapple with the implications of something coming from, well, seemingly nothing.
Yeah, that's a mind bender for sure.
Total mind bender. And the material actually quotes physicist Paul Davies in his book, The Edge of Infinity, where he calls the Big Bang a true miracle and a suspension of physical laws.
Wow, that's quite a statement from a scientist.
It is. It highlights the mystery at the heart of how we understand the universe's beginning, even from a scientific perspective.
For sure. And this all kind of circles back to the question of God's existence, doesn't it?
Right. And the material explores different views on that, even the atheist viewpoint, actually quoting Psalm 14.1, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God."
So there's that clear line being drawn between those who believe in a creator and those who don't.
Exactly. And then we get into the real head-scratcher. Where did the matter itself even come from?
Yeah, like the very stuff of the universe. How do you explain that?
Right. The material quotes Sarah Kaplan from the Washington Post, who wrote about early universe conditions, possibly being biased toward creating something out of nothing.
Interesting. So even within science, the question of how matter first appeared is a big deal.
Huge deal. It's one of those fundamental mysteries that everyone's trying to solve.
And that leads to those critical thinking questions posed in the material. How do we even know if any of this is true? Has anyone actually observed it? And what assumptions are we making when we try to answer these questions?
Exactly. We got to scrutinize our own thinking.
Absolutely. Now, the discussion brings in Seth Shostak from the SETI Institute, who suggests that, well, maybe quantum mechanics can explain it.
Quantum mechanics, the realm of the very, very small.
Right. And according to him, the principles of quantum mechanics might allow matter and energy to just kind of pop into existence from, what we perceive as nothing.
It's a bit of a wild concept, but it's a serious area of study.
Right. But then the material dives into the idea of the universe creating itself. And it raises some pretty major challenges.
Yeah, like if nothing existed, how could there even be a cause for anything?
Right. And where would the space for this self-creation even come from?
And how can nothing create something?
It's a real paradox.
It's like a cosmic chicken and egg problem.
Exactly. Then the material brings up the idea of physical laws being the driving force. It mentions Lawrence Kreis's view that physics might be able to explain the universe coming from nothing.
But it also presents a counterpoint from John C. Lennox in God's Undertaker.
Right. And Lennox argues that physical laws describe how things work, but they don't actually cause things to happen.
He makes this great analogy about traffic laws.
Oh, yeah, how those describe how cars should move, but they don't make the cars move.
Exactly. There has to be a driver.
Right, someone to put the law into action. So even if physics could explain the how, it doesn't necessarily explain the who or the why.
Right. It's like knowing the rules of the game, but not who started the game or why they're playing.
Exactly. Now, there's also the concept of quantum fluctuations as the initial spark.
Ah, the realm of the weird and unpredictable.
Right. But even here, the material asks a crucial question. Where did the space for these quantum fluctuations even come from?
Like the canvas on which the universe was painted?
Yeah, like the very framework for existence itself. So it seems like even these very scientific explanations run into some fundamental roadblocks.
Yeah, they push the mystery back further, but don't necessarily solve it.
Okay, so let's recap. What's the main takeaway from the idea of the universe creating itself?
Well, the material highlights three big unresolved issues. First, the need for a first cause something to kickstart the whole process. Second, the origin of space itself, like where did the universe even have room to exist?
And third, how can something, anything, come from absolute nothingness?
It's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is. All right, let's move on to option number 2, a universe that has always existed.
The eternal universe.
Right. But the material wastes no time in bringing up a big challenge to this idea, an infinite age.
Like, if the universe had no beginning, then it's been around forever.
Which means it would have had to exist for an eternity.
Right. And that's where the second law of thermodynamics comes in.
Which basically states that everything tends towards disorder, right?
Yeah. Things break down, energy dissipates, and ultimately, usable energy decreases over time.
So how does that apply to an eternal universe?
Well, the material quotes Steve Kumar, who makes the point that if the universe only have a limited amount of energy and usable energy is constantly decreasing, then it can't have existed forever.
Because eventually it would have run out of usable energy.
Right, it would reach the state of maximum entropy, as they call it.
Total equilibrium, no more energy to do work.
Yeah, it would be a pretty bleak, static universe.
Not a very dynamic place.
Not at all.
And John Hartnett is also quoted saying that the universe, as we see it, is actually really far from a state of thermodynamic equilibrium.
Meaning it's still got lots of usable energy.
Right, which suggests it had a starting point.
But it was infused with that energy.
And Danny Faulkner, from Answers in Genesis, supports this idea by pointing out that the universe is far from maximum entropy.
Again, suggesting it hasn't been around forever.
Right. So these arguments are all based on some pretty solid scientific principles.
Yeah, they're grounded in our understanding of physics.
Now, what's interesting is that the material even quotes Joseph Silk from his book, The Big Bang.
Right. And Silk acknowledges that the Big Bang Theory is, in a way, a theory without a beginning.
So even he admits it doesn't explain where that initial state came from.
It just describes the expansion from that point onward.
So even the most widely accepted scientific theory leaves some big questions unanswered.
It pushes the mystery further back in time, but it doesn't eliminate it.
All right, so to sum up this second option, the idea of a universe that has always existed.
Well, the material concludes that it just doesn't line up with the second law of thermodynamics.
Because if it was infinitely old, it would have already run out of steam, essentially.
Yeah, it wouldn't be this dynamic, energetic universe we observe today.
Okay, makes sense. So that brings us to the third option. The universe was created by God.
The creator-God hypothesis.
Right. But here's the classic question, and the material addresses it head-on. If God created the universe, who created God?
Right. That's the question everyone asks.
Yeah, and the material tackles it by referencing Exodus 3.14, where God says, I am, I am.
A pretty profound statement.
It is. And also Revelation 22.13, where God calls himself the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end.
So encompassing all of time and existence.
Right. And the explanation given is that God, as the creator, is not like a being within the universe, but rather something beyond it.
Transcendent, outside of our normal categories of space and time.
Exactly. So God is described as self-existent, without a beginning or an end, not bound by the limitations of created things.
Meaning he wouldn't need a cause in the same way that we do.
Right. The material also quotes Isaiah 46.9, where God says, remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me.
Emphasizing his unique and uncreated nature.
Yeah. And this is where the material makes a really interesting point. It suggests that if science can't fully explain where matter itself came from, then the theory of evolution, which is all about how life developed after the universe was already here.
Kind of lacks a foundation to stand on.
Right, like it's missing a starting point.
Because if the very building blocks of the universe are a mystery, how can you be so sure about the processes that supposedly shaped life afterwards?
It's a good question. And it leads to another point the material makes. If you can't explain the origin of matter naturally, why would you just automatically accept evolution as the explanation for everything else?
It's like building a house on sand.
Exactly. So the logical conclusion presented here is that believing in God as the creator actually makes a lot of sense.
Especially compared to a self-creating universe or one that contradicts the laws of physics.
Right. So we've explored the universe's origin. Now let's move on to another huge question, the origin of life itself.
Right. How do we get from non-living matter to living organisms?
It's a mind-boggling leap, and the material lays out two main possibilities. Either life arose naturally through some chemical processes, or
It was created by a supernatural force.
created by God.
Right.
So to understand this better, the material outlines the basic building blocks of life.
It all starts with atoms.
Atoms combine to form molecules,
And some molecules are amino acids.
which are the building blocks of proteins.
And proteins are essential for all known life.
Right. So the question is, how did those basic ingredients come together to form the first living cell?
A cell that could replicate and pass on genetic information.
Right. Now, the material brings up the famous Miller-Urey experiment.
Oh yeah, that classic experiment that tried to recreate the conditions of early Earth.
Right. But the material immediately starts asking some tough questions.
Like, why did they use certain gases like methane and ammonia, but no oxygen?
And what kinds of amino acids did they actually produce?
And really, what did the results of that experiment really tell us about the origin of life?
Yeah, because it wasn't exactly a slam dunk.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole issue of oxygen in the early atmosphere.
Which is a real problem for naturalistic theories of life's origin.
The material actually quotes Duane Gish, a biochemist, who argued that free oxygen would have destroyed the organic molecules necessary for life to form.
It's like oxygen is both friend and foe.
We need it to breathe, but it also breaks things down.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. And the material highlights this dilemma by saying that, well, oxygen is needed for the ozone layer.
Which protects us from harmful radiation from the sun.
Right. So how could life have survived without that protection? But also, how could it have formed in an environment where oxygen was scarce?
Some kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. And then there's the idea that life might have started in the oceans.
Which brings up another issue, hydrolysis.
Which is basically water breaking down complex molecules.
Right. So even in the oceans, creating those building blocks of life would have been challenging.
Another hurdle to overcome.
Exactly. And another interesting point is that there are tons of different amino acids out there.
But life only uses about 20 of them.
Right. So why those specific 20?
Out of all the possibilities?
Yeah, that requires some pretty specific selection and arrangement to create functional proteins.
It's like a cosmic lottery ticket.
With incredibly low odds.
Right. And the material actually includes quotes from several scientists who are skeptical about naturalistic explanations for life's origin.
Yeah, it's not just a fringe view.
There's Hubert Yaki, a physicist, who said, "A great deal of effort has been expended in finding theories for the origin of life without success."
So basically, they've been trying for a long time but haven't cracked the code yet.
Right. And then there's Donald Johnson, who has PhDs in both chemistry and computer science.
A double doctor. Impressive.
Right. And he argues that the probability of life arising from purely physical causes is vanishingly small, given that we don't have any viable scientific explanation for it.
So the odds are stacked against it, to say the least.
Yeah. Jonathan Wells, a molecular and cell biologist, criticizes how some textbook examples of evidence for evolution are presented.
Like they're oversimplified or misleading.
Right. He suggests that they give this impression that scientists have it all figured out, but that's not really the case.
So there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Exactly. And lastly, John Ashton, a chemist, points out that just pushing the timeline back billions of years doesn't actually solve the problem of how non-living matter could spontaneously organize into a living cell.
It's like saying, well, if we give it enough time, anything's possible.
Right.
But that's not really an explanation.
Right. It's just kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
So what's the main takeaway about the origin of life?
Well, the material concludes that if science can't explain how life could have risen naturally, then the theory of evolution, which depends on the existence of life in the first place, doesn't have a solid foundation.
It's like a building without a base.
Exactly. And again, it suggests that the idea of God as the creator of life offers a more coherent explanation.
All right, let's move on to question number 3. The origin of dinosaurs.
Finally getting to the good stuff.
Right. But here's the thing. The material starts by shifting our focus a bit. Instead of asking, what happened to the dinosaurs?
Which is what everyone always wants to know.
Right. It asks, where did dinosaurs come from?
Interesting. It's looking at their beginnings, not their end.
Exactly. And then it goes straight to Genesis 1.24:25.
The sixth day of creation.
Right. It reads, "And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good."
So the implication here is that dinosaurs, as land animals, were created by God on the same day as other land animals, possibly even humans.
Right, which goes against the standard evolutionary timeline.
Which puts the origin of dinosaurs way back, about 220 million years ago.
The material actually mentions Eoraptor, a dinosaur from Argentina that's considered one of the earliest known dinosaurs.
Dating back about 228 million years.
Right. But of course, the evolutionary view is that dinosaurs gradually evolved from these more primitive reptiles called archosaurs, which means ruling reptiles.
So it was a slow, gradual process over millions of years.
Right. And the material mentions Dimetrodon, which is this interesting creature that lived even earlier.
Kind of looks like a dinosaur with a big sail on its back.
Yeah, but it's not actually classified as a dinosaur.
It's just a distant relative.
Right. So even though it looks similar, it's not part of the direct dinosaur lineage.
It's a good example of how looks can be deceiving.
For sure. Now, the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County is quoted as saying that the common ancestor of all dinosaurs was probably this small bipedal predator.
Bipedal meaning it walked on two legs.
Right. And it had shorter forelimbs than hind limbs.
So a bit like a tiny T-Rex.
Yeah, kind of. And the material mentions some more recently discovered fossils like Asilosaurus and Nyasasaurus.
These are classified as dinosaur forms, which means they're closely related to dinosaurs.
Right, and they're considered to be either very close relatives of true dinosaurs or maybe even their ancestors.
So they give us a glimpse into that early stage of dinosaur evolution.
Right. But even with these new discoveries, there's still a lot of debate about the precise origins of dinosaurs.
It's a bit of a puzzle that paleontologists are still piecing together,
The material even includes a quote from Michael Balter in Science magazine.
where he talks about how challenging it is to find those truly definitive fossils from the very earliest days of dinosaurs.
Right, so it's still an area of active research.
There are lots of unknowns.
And then the material raises the issue of a lack of transitional fossils.
Those missing links that we often hear about.
Right. It specifically focuses on the absence of pre-sauropod fossils that would show the gradual development of sauropods, which are those long-necked, long-tailed dinosaurs.
Like Brachiosaurus or Apatosaurus.
Yeah, those guys. And it cites research from the Institute for Creation Research.
Which, as you might guess from the name, takes a creationist perspective.
Right. So they're arguing that if dinosaurs evolved gradually, we should see more evidence of these intermediate forms.
But the fossil record doesn't seem to show that.
Right. And Smithsonian.com is also mentioned, which acknowledges that the origins of dinosaurs are a bit controversial.
Even within the scientific community, there's no complete consensus.
Right. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The material shifts gears and starts presenting what it calls evidence that supports a creationist view of dinosaur origins.
Okay, this should be good.
It lists things like soft tissue, unfossilized bones, proteins, even red blood cells and DNA found in dinosaur fossils.
And these have been found in fossils dating back to the 1990s.
Right. And some argue that these findings don't really fit with the conventional idea that dinosaurs died out millions of years ago.
Because these things shouldn't last that long.
Exactly. So it's presented as evidence that maybe the timeline is off.
Or maybe there's more to the story.
So what's the conclusion about the origin of dinosaurs?
Well, the material argues that if the evolutionary model can't produce clear evidence of these transitional forms, then it's not as strong as it claims to be.
It's like a chain with missing links.
Exactly. And once again, it presents the idea that God created dinosaurs as a more plausible explanation.
Okay, so we've explored three big questions so far: the origin of the universe, the origin of life, and the origin of dinosaurs.
Three pretty fundamental questions about our existence.
Right, and now we're getting to the fourth and final point, the power question.
Hit me with it.
The question is, show me any observational evidence for evolution that does not require me to use faith.
So basically, show me the hard proof.
Right. Evidence that doesn't rely on interpretation or assumptions.
Just the observable facts.
Right. So the material starts by quoting Arisaka Lab at UCLA.
Okay.
They talk about how the earliest life on Earth emerged maybe 4 billion years ago, possibly in the oceans.
So setting the stage for the evolutionary story.
Right. Then there's a statement from NASA back in 2003.
What did NASA have to say?
Well, they suggested that it would be inexcusably egocentric to believe that Earth is the only planet in the universe with life.
Interesting. So they're open to the possibility of extraterrestrial life?
Right, which, if true, would have huge implications for our understanding of how life begins and spreads.
It would mean that life might be more common than we think.
Exactly. But then the material does something really interesting. It presents a list of things that no one has ever directly observed.
Like what?
Well, first, the Big Bang itself.
No one was there to witness it.
Right. Second, a galaxy or a star evolving into existence.
These processes take billions of years.
Way beyond our human lifespan. Third, the origin of life from non-living matter.
We've never seen that happen in a lab or in nature.
Right. Fourth, one kind of creature evolving into a fundamentally different kind of creature.
Like a dog evolving into a cat.
Right. That kind of large-scale transformation. Fifth, canyons being formed over millions of years.
We see erosion happening, but not on that time scale.
Right. And finally, millions of years themselves.
We can't directly observe vast stretches of time.
So the point the material is making is that a lot of evolutionary theory is based on inferences about the past.
Based on what we see in the present and our understanding of how things work.
but it's not directly observable in the same way that, say, gravity is.
Right. It requires a certain degree of
To-
interpretation.
And faith, according to the material.
So what's the takeaway from this power question?
Well, the material concludes that evolution, as this all-encompassing explanation for life, is actually presented as a belief system that relies on faith.
Faith in what, specifically?
Faith in who or what was responsible for creation.
Okay.
Faith in the nature of what was created, the methods of creation, the timing, and the duration of it all.
So it's saying that both evolution and creationism involve faith.
Right. Just in different things.
Interesting. And what does the material say about the Bible in all of this?
It presents the Bible as offering direct answers to these questions, calling it the history book of the universe.
So it's presented as a reliable account of how things came to be.
Right, and it quotes Exodus 20.1, which says, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day."
So a literal 6-day creation.
Right. And for anyone who wants to learn more about this perspective, the material recommends checking out Tyrannus Hall Bible College.
THPC.
Right. They've got lots of resources available online. You can find them at https://www.youtube.com at Tyrannus Hall Bible College. So there you have it, our deep dive into Mike Riddle's 4 power questions to ask an evolutionist.
We've explored some pretty mind-blowing concepts.
We have, and the material you gave us really highlighted the different viewpoints on the origin of the universe, life, and dinosaurs.
And the reasoning behind each of those viewpoints.
Right. And one thing that's clear is that the material emphasizes the importance of your starting assumptions when thinking about these big questions.
Because your worldview really shapes how you interpret the evidence.
Exactly. And the material encourages us to really think critically about the basis for both evolutionary and creation-based explanations.
To not just accept things at face value.
Right. To really examine the evidence and the logic behind each view.
And ultimately, the material suggests that both perspectives involve a degree of faith.
Faith in different things, but faith nonetheless.
And that power question about observational evidence really makes you stop and think.
It does. It challenges us to consider what constitutes real evidence and where faith comes into play.
It's a question that each of us has to grapple with individually.
Absolutely. So we hope this exploration has been helpful for you, that it's given you a clearer understanding of the arguments presented in the material.
And spark some further exploration on your own.
Because there's so much more to delve into here.
And we encourage you to check out those resources that resonated with you, especially Tyrannus Hall Bible College, THBC.
They've got a wealth of information at https://www.youtube.com at Tyrannus Hall Bible College. And for those interested in more